this is Vicki Gervais of the Greater Gainesville Chamber, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Tom Wells, one of our candidates for our U.S. representative in District 3. So Tom's going to tell us a little about himself, and then I've got some questions for him, and we'll get to know him a little bit better today. Tom, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's a very great pleasure to have the opportunity to talk to the business community.
Great. All right. Well, I've got 5 questions for you, and then we'll have some time to chat at the end. So first question is a pretty basic one. Why are you running for this office?
I have grandchildren. They need a planet to live on. I count that you can't save some little piece of the planet, so I count that I have 8 billion grandchildren. And it is time that we embrace. I'm not seeing me big, I'm seeing you big still.
Is that right? See, I see me little and you big.
Well, that's good. I don't
That's
like
good.
looking big that much, and I interrupted myself.
That's funny.
The the goal of my life is to make sure that we work, that I at least do everything I can to make sure we get to the point that Martin Luther King anticipated so very long ago, where we all learn to live together as brothers rather than dying together as fools. And that takes a massive reform. And we have the opportunity right now of a massive reform because the Supreme Court on July 1st took complete control of our Constitution and totally deformed it, saying that the President of the United States has the full authority. Every order he gives to the military as commander-in-chief is a legal order by their analysis. And what that means, as Justice Sotomayor interpreted for us in her dissent, is that the president can order assassinations, military assassinations. He can put people in jail. He can overthrow the government. All these things, none of which even are imaginable under the Constitution. Our Constitution, as John Marshall said famously back in the early 1800s, creates a rule of law where no one is above the law, where if the president were to be found guilty of molesting a girl in the White House or any crime that he commits, you would punish him regardless of the fact that he is presently president. We don't need a president who's committing crimes. We need somebody while he's in jail to take over, and that's why you have a vice president. That's why you have the Speaker of the House. That's why you have the succession of secession. Now, they made a mistake. The Trump ruling, and it was the United States versus Trump, applies to the president. And presently, the president is Joe Biden, as I recall. And rather than assassinate anyone at all, he could do us the immense favor of sending the army over to demand the resignation of the 6 culprits who defied the Constitution and effectively joined the insurrection, and tell them, we are demanding your resignation. We are demanding the rescission of all precedents which have been created in contradistinction to the judicial review that John Marshall argued for in 1803, which I think is a legitimate check on the powers of the Congress and the president, that yes, the judiciary should review laws that are passed by the federal and the state government, because all of those should be consistent with the Constitution. And if he does that, we will no longer allow corporate money in elections. The word bribery was transformed over a 50-year period from its common law meaning in the 18th century to be political speech, to be the only way you can get elected for 90% of the Democratic Party or 100% of the present Republican Party. And those people represent corporations really well, but they don't represent people in any real measure. So if we do that, people, I think, will recognize that we all live on the same planet and that we need to work together rather than working for corporate profits. So right now, both parties, to my dismay, feel forced to represent genocide. They have no alternative. The APAC people threw out by spending 30 or $40 million, they showed that they have control over the Congress, that they can throw out members like Jamal and like Cori Bush. And why would you not fear somebody who can throw you out? You hope as you go to Congress, whether Republican or Democrat, that you will have the chance to do something wonderful and significant for the people of America. I trust that people do that. But they have to obey the reality of corporate funding. Now, the Constitution is deficient in not mentioning how you fund elections because until Andrew Jackson, nobody raised money to have an election. It was a matter of, oh, well, if you want me to be president, okay, I guess it's okay with me. If there is to be money, and I expect there should, and I believe there should be, because everybody should have a chance to expose what they are for in running for president or Congress or state house, then the most democratic way to fund elections would be to give something which would not have been possible 20 or 30 years ago. Give every voter, every registered voter, a little plastic debit card, and it has $200 of public money. And we use that as the only form of funding of elections. If your potential representative can convince you to give part of that to him, then he has a better chance of getting elected. If he can't convince you that he's going to represent you, he probably won't get very far. So, yeah, that's what's driving me. It's the possibility of restoring that Constitution and solving the problems. But that's up to President Biden, and I'm trying to bring influence to bear upon him. And the influence that I think would be best understood by him is that if Trump wins the election, he is a vengeful person. He was willing to ask the mob to assassinate his own Vice President Pence. So I would not trust that power to any person. And if Trump goes and fires the 6 members of the Supreme Court, then the precedents vanish and that power vanishes, and we return to the real Constitution. I find well north of 95% of people I talk to at watermelon, peanut festivals, etc., nobody wants a dictatorship. Everybody still likes the actual Constitution. So it gives me encouragement that there's a possibility out there.
Okay. All right. Well, you maybe already answered this question, but our second question is, what national issue is most pressing to you, and what is its impact on our local community?
Oh, well, the most pressing issue, I have a PhD in theoretical physics. I can read the climate papers. I know that the UN climate science is funded by the fossil fuel companies, and they control the inputs thereto and the outputs thereof. And until 1 year ago, in 30 years of climate meetings, none of the reports ever used the word fossil fuels, which is pretty astonishing. And last year was a big breakthrough that they used the word fossil fuels. We need a little bigger breakthrough than that. Now, there are plenty of people who doubt climate science. These people, most of them have gotten on a bus, I'm sure, or in a car, which was designed on a computer. more interestingly, more critically, they've gotten on planes and flown places, or they know people who at least flown places. We're a very flighty country, happily. That's wonderful. But those planes are designed in computers, and the algorithms for that design are vastly more complicated than knowing that if the sun shines down on the ocean and there's carbon dioxide in the air, when the energy is converted to thermal energy, it will get reflected from the carbon dioxide. And gee, things like, and you've never heard this, the amount of heat absorbed in the ocean in a year is around 150 times the amount of energy that we produce by all the burning of trees and forests and cooking and oil and gas and all that energy. We know exactly how much is being used in the fossil fuel industry because they have paid, they get paid. We know exactly how much. And we see by 4,000 buoys in the ocean with really fine thermometers, they go up and down a few thousand meters in the ocean, and they report how much energy the ocean has absorbed. Now, if you think we can continue to absorb 150 times the amount of energy we produce in the ocean and the glaciers aren't going to melt, I would sell you a bridge in Brooklyn, but it'll probably get underwater in a while.
All right. All right. Well, moving on to another weighty topic. Inequity continues to plague our region and the nation. What factors are the most significant contributors, and how do you think Congress can affect change?
Oh, inequities. Well, the inequities arise when you have corporations who actually their lawyers presently write the laws which Congress passes. And they own the regulatory commissions already. Their lobbyists are in the FAA. And their lobbyists said, hey, we don't need to check the new Boeing. Oh, I can't remember the name of the variant of the airplane. It had the same body, but it had completely different power system. The power system is kind of useful for getting off the ground and staying off the ground. And they did not do any live testing of the new plane. And under certain conditions, it would go into a power dive. And you lose 500 people, you almost destroy their own company. Regulations of corporations are for their good and our good as well. If they kill too many people, they end up paying a lot of money. So the other driver of inequities that should not exist are things like student debt. 70 million people have student debt. Other countries send their best and brightest to American universities and pay their full way in the hope that they will come back to their home country and bring that knowledge with them. We are punishing our people. My daughter is a medical doctor. She's 40 years old. She still has debt from medical school. There are people on Social Security with university debt. This is insane. The basis of a sound democracy is an educated population. They knew that 250 years ago. It hasn't changed.
Okay, very good. Again, another topic on the same lines, I think. Divisiveness and gridlock have only increased in our nation. What measures do you think would help move us forward?
Divisiveness and gridlock. Wow. So gridlock is kind of artificial in some respects when both parties are getting paid by the same, getting elected by the same money from the same donors. So a little bit of that is artificial. What's the word? Kafabi.
Mm.
The wrestlers talk bad about each other, but then in politics, there's no wrestling match, just the kafabi. And when we have people striving to better represent you, and to better represent your children, that will cease to be a problem. In the 30s, we had a guy called FDR. I think people may remember him. He would win currently Republican states with 98% of the vote because he was working for the people and creating a healthcare system better than we had before, creating Social Security, honoring minimum wages, and creating a livable environment where people didn't go into debt for getting an education. When I was getting an education, my educational loan was $3,000, and the interest on it was deferred till 10 years after I finished my PhD. And then the interest was simple interest at 3% fixed. Well, now the laws have been changed, and student debt is non-dischargeable in bankruptcy, and it will stay with you even if you're killed on your way out of graduation ceremony. Your parents will have to pay for it. Somebody has to pay for it. And I'm sorry, this is not a government of by and for the people. It's not a government of by and for the government. It's a government of by and for corporate profits. And the reason that AIPAC is so effective in getting money out of our government to buy bombs to kill babies is because the profits off of those bombs drive the decisions in Washington. So the other day, Israel shot down a lot of drones that were coming in to try and bomb facilities in Israel. And each missile they shot cost either $1 million or $3.5 million. And this was to take down drones, which cost a few $1,000s. So in one evening, they spent $3.5 billion. And I expect well over half of that was profits for the bomb makers. And that's why we have war. That's why we can't have peace break out.
Okay, very good. And the final question is one of those great wrap-up questions that we like here, which is, why should the business community vote for you?
Well, because I understand what's going on, that the big corporations fund the Congress, that our local businesses can't pop out $100 million to buy legislation. And 100 million will get you 100 billion in Congress. An early example of that is Medicare Part D under George W. Bush, where that law contained a phrase amazing to the soul. It said that Medicare, the largest drug purchaser in the world, by law has to pay full price for any drug they buy. They cannot negotiate drug prices. They spent $100 million lobbying for that phrase in that law. And the take from that phrase every year is about $100 billion. Now, is that helping the local Chamber of Commerce? Not at all, because the cost of that shows up in your taxes. And oh yes, the tax form to lower the top income tax bracket. The point right now is where, I can't say the right names, Bezos has hundreds of billions of dollars of stock. And he doesn't have to pay any taxes because he hasn't sold any of the stock. It's an unrealized capital gain. And he can live off of that and pay no taxes because all he has to do is go to the bank as a very well qualified borrower. He pays a 1 or 2% interest and instead of paying 20, 30, 50, 90% tax, he gives the bank 2%. And the whole system is set up for the banks, which are completely non-productive. They produce nothing except, and there should be state banks. They produce nothing except wealth. And they do that wealth mainly after Glass-Steagall was repealed in 2000, no, in 1999. They invest our money in their schemes. And when everything goes south, like in 2009, the only people who come out hurting are the people who borrowed the money because the bank told them they were a safe borrower, and the banks made trillions of dollars. So everything is set up where the working class and the small businesses are destroyed. Right now, insurance for homeowners and insurance for businesses surely are off the charts. If you're living near the ocean, goes up. We might see why that in the next day or two with the storm approaching. That requires presently for the system to survive massive reinsurance. And the reinsurance companies were set up to in an era of a little bit less climate problems. And so the reinsurance companies in Europe are we're accustomed to paying maybe $5 or $6 billion every year. And now with the same amount of coverage, they're paying 100 billion and they're losing a lot of money. And that's not going to remain. And we have to have a reform. The best reform I can think of would be to socialize the risk so that individual businesses can be restored when they get hit, and make sure that it's sensible. I mean, rebuilding on a place which was 12 feet underwater in the storm, maybe that's not the best idea.
All right, well, that is a very apropos analogy given this week for sure. So in the last minute or two that we have together, this is your time. If there's anything I didn't ask you that you wanted me to ask you or any other thoughts you want to share, the floor is yours.
Well, in the hope that we restore the Constitution, which can be done for the first time and done completely and thoroughly, in that hope, I know what needs to be done in Congress on 100 different bills. And I can offer the outlines of those bills immediately. The wealth of America reached its highest point really at the end of World War II and then the 10 or 15 years thereafter. World War II, we spent 42% of GDP on the war. And we dropped bombs, and then we helped rebuild with the Marshall Plan. If we skip the bombs and we spend the same 42% of GDP for the next 5 years on dropping solar panels on other countries and batteries on other countries, and we nationalize the mining companies so that they go to other countries to mine lithium and cobalt, etc., but do so in a clean and beneficial fashion for the host country, which would be a novelty in our history. Then we can, in 5 years, have a much less violent and a much happier world because everything solar is already 20 times cheaper than anything dug from the earth. And the lies of the fossil fuel company have dominated the discussion for 50 years. In 1898, there was the first article I'm aware of talking about how carbon would trap energy and reflect it back and heat the earth. And we've known that for a very long time, and it's time we acted to the betterment of our children. We have borrowed this planet from our children. We don't own it. We got to return it in a livable shape. So really great. Oh, yes, I'm supposed to say, I'm Tom Wells. See me at tomwellsforcongress.com, and please donate so we can fight together to achieve the nation that we've always thought we were.
Terrific. All right. Well, on that note, I will add that the Greater Gainesville Chamber thinks it's very important that we all exercise our right and we get out and make our voices heard. So take advantage of all these resources and make sure you are ready to vote on Tuesday, November 5th. Thank you so much, Tom, for spending the time today.
November, yes, my great pleasure. Thank you.
Bye now.